Welcome. Hello, everyone. My name is Gabriela and I'm the CEO of enuf, a spin-off of B Corp of the Waste Not Want Not student initiatives that started at Concordia University in 2016. As we approach the holiday season with a lot of festivities, today we discuss one example of a very festive occasion, and that's weddings. And Monica Connor, who is a formal enough community coordinator, just put together her own low-waste wedding and last summer. And welcome back, Monica. Gabriela Lopez is a current enough community coordinator, is about to get married herself, and so she's in the process of organizing her own wedding. So I'm doing a bit of matchmaking today. And at the same time, I hope that some of this conversation will be of some inspiration of how to reduce waste during festivities, including weddings. And so they're both fireballs of energy. So I'm really excited for this chat. And then so it'll be very fun. Monica and Gabriela, congratulations to both of you. And I'll gonna get off the screen now and pass it on to both of you to take it on.
Thank you so much, Carlos. And Monica, I think we should give you the first real congratulations because he said about to get married. It's not going to happen anytime soon. We've got a lot of planning to do still. But you just had your wedding. It went really well. So congratulations. And thank you so much for being here to share your process and how that went for you and what were your difficulties and stuff like that. So let's just start with that. What was your process like? How did you go about putting together a low waste wedding? What was the idea behind it when you first started organizing it?
Well, before I start there, I have to disagree with you. I think you get to have a congratulations too. You just got engaged, and whether you're in the planning process or not, love is love, and that's exciting and worth celebrating. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited to share the process. The process was quite a process, but it was a very meaningful and rewarding one. We can, if you want to add some photo support to the screen, I can run through some things that were part of our process. So the process started with setting our core values. And this is just a slide that examples kind of how those values came to fruition. The first thing we did when we started planning was sit down and identify our core shared values. And I'll talk about values a lot today, probably, because they all come back to that. But things like a stress-free day of were really important to us, having minimal work on the day itself. A connection between our guests, not just us and our guests, but our guests and other guests was an important one for us. A lot of our family and friends had never met each other, had never been together. I'm from Chicago. My husband's from BC, and our circles hadn't overlapped yet. So
that's
we wanted
my favorite part about weddings. Worlds colliding like that. So there's a lot of different people coming in together. Were you worried at all that the people that you were inviting, they'd be very different, and maybe going for a low waste wedding might be a risk of how other people would take it, or you were pretty confident that everyone was going to go with it?
There was definitely a little bit of both. I would say one of the main challenges for me was worrying about people feeling comfortable. And one of the things that makes people comfortable is being in a space that is familiar to them. And I was a little bit worried that our approach would be unfamiliar. At the same time, I had a lot of confidence in our ability to do what was meaningful for us. And for that to be seen and shared. And a lot of our friends and family share those values of keeping waste low and having a good time and doing things like playing games and being comfortable in your clothing. We did not have a very formal event. It was very informal. We were in a park and people were playing games, and we advised people not to wear heels or ties and stuff like that. It was going to be mid-August. It was going to be hot. So yeah, so in these pictures, you'll see people playing games. In the big picture, the couple who's in that awesome matching outfit, that is some friends of mine from years and years and years ago in high school. And then next to them is one of my newest friends here in BC. Next to them is Matthew's cousins, and next to them is a friend from university. So worlds really did collide here. But everyone was having a blast, and there were friendships made during that day that are lasting today, which is really exciting. So I think
that's definitely a marker of a successful wedding. You set up another wedding, the follow-up wedding to the wedding.
Actually, we did have a couple. They've been together longer than us, but they're now engaged. And she reached out to me. She was like, "Hey, tell me about your process." So yeah, you're right.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, but I see that some of the people are still wearing heels, though. So there was some bravery involved for walking in the grass and stuff like that. But you were sure, I guess, was the outdoor venue associated with this idea of low waist, or was the venue just like you started off with that and you're like, okay, let's make everything around this low waist?
That's a great question. We picked the outdoor venue because we wanted to have games. We love games, and we love games as a vessel for connection and play and getting to know people. And so instead of dancing, we had games. And we looked at a couple of venues. They were really expensive, first of all, and not a ton of space. And there was a lot of material stuff involved with venues. And at the time, we were kind of new to this area. We didn't really know what was around, but we started looking at regional parks in the area. We just went and visited this one and fell in love with it. You'll see throughout the photos, there's a lake there. There's a mountain behind the lake. It's 10 minutes from our house, and it had everything that we needed. It had a covered area for food and beautiful side secret field for the ceremony.
Wow,
and we wanted to explore our local parks. So
that's so magical. Yeah. It's so like it, weddings, you know how they are, but it feels like you kind of stepped into it and you're like, oh, this is perfect. It has to be here. So that's really happy.
Yeah, it was very much like that. And financial sustainability was a part of our plan too. It wasn't just waste. It was, can we afford this? Can we make this happen within our budget? And the park route really was the way to go.
I would imagine that in terms of cost as well, the park would allow you to increase your guest list too, because then you're not the formalities of a sit down dance type situation aren't really restricting you as much here in the park. So
not at all.
Knowing that, looking for somewhere where you could play games, an outdoor location that's really fun and enjoyable. Did that increase the size of your guest list? Did it make it harder to cut back on who's not invited?
No, actually, we had a guest list that was about 140 originally, and we knew not all of those people would be able to come because a lot of them are international, and it's the middle of August. It's when everyone, does family vacations or something. We knew it wouldn't be that high. Our guest list was actually 75 people in the end. And that was kind of perfect for us because it allowed us to spend time with each individual guest too. I think when you have too big of a guest list, all of a sudden you're spending 30 seconds saying hi to each person instead of taking the time to play a game with them or eat with them.
Kind of defeats the purpose of the way you organize this, to create those connections and reestablish those bonds that you've had for a long time.
Exactly.
How did you incorporate children and young families into your planning process?
Well, that's a great question. Love kids. Both I work with kids. Matthew's worked with kids. We have, between the two of us, a lot of young sisters. And my sister is a musician. She plays the Irish fiddle, and she actually played us down the aisle. She put together a
That's so
song.
cute.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have a picture of her though, right?
Young person. No, she's not super young. She's 19. We don't have a ton of kids in our circles right now, but we would love to have them. Yeah.
I'm just bringing it up
That's
too
the
because
answer.
as a question of sustainability, you brought up economic sustainability. There's also social sustainability. So being able to, have all of your community involved. A lot of people don't feel comfortable having children in their wedding, maybe because they have like more of a party mentality about how they're organizing it. It's not so much park games. It's really like dancing, let's drink, let's socialize, an adult setting. So children aren't very appropriate in that circumstance, but it still creates some stress for people, for some guests who have to figure out how are they going to manage childcare, or if they have to travel, or so these considerations are very much an important aspect of making a sustainable community-based wedding. So it's you guys had the lucky alternative. No babies needed to be accommodated. Everybody on your list was already.
It's funny, actually, our photographers were new parents. And when we met with them a year prior, they hadn't had their son yet. And when they did, I was the one who was like, oh my gosh, you're totally welcome to bring him. You don't even have to take that many photos. Like, don't even worry about capturing anything. You can bring him if you want. And they were like, oh no, we have his grandparents who will take care of him in the area. I was like, oh, okay.
So
I would just hung out with the baby all day.
It would be better that the cute distraction wasn't there.
I do think that the park setting is perfect if you have circles with a lot of young kids, though, because it just allows a lot of space to play. Yeah.
Space to play, maybe take a step away from the crowd for a minute. Let's get our bearings again before we join back in. And even not for children, for anybody participating in a big social event, especially coming off of COVID, maybe our social media is a bit lowered. Having these types of spaces where you can separate from the group and still feel like you're involved and then come back in once you've recharged your battery. I feel like that's really, that's the first thing that came to my mind when you started talking about that. So not just for kids, also for some adults. And as for actually, I
think we were just a bunch of kids, honestly. There was no alcohol. We had drinks and coffee that were non-alcoholic, and because there's a park, you can't have alcohol in the park here. And we had games instead of dancing. Like, the party was a very young, youthful, silly party, as you'll see.
Then on the other side, on the flip side, did you have any older guests, grandparents, or older relatives?
We were lucky to have Matthew's grandmother there, and she was the oldest of us, and it was a joy to have her there. And I think, practically speaking, the kind of orientation of the field there, it was kind of a slanted field, and so we make sure that you're careful with how people move up and down the hill. And so we started kind of at the bottom of the hill and then walked up for our reception after the ceremony. And there wasn't a lot of like going back and forth. There was just, one hill, one way. Yeah.
More secure, like no tripping so much. But it's an outdoor venue. Where did you have any backup plans for weather?
No.
You're looking at your venues. What if it rains? What would you have done?
There's a big structure here. I'm gonna skip ahead a couple photos, I think. There, you can see the structure in the lower right-hand photo. That's where we had our reception with food. It actually rained briefly in the morning, and I was a little bit nervous, but it cooled down the day perfectly, because usually here in BC in August, it's really hot and dry. And the thing you have to worry about the most is actually forest fires. And we were worried about forest fires, because that would have meant, like, you can't really get away from smoke with an umbrella or a tent. We probably would have found, if we had seen the forecasting forest fire smoke, we would have had to find an indoor venue. That would have changed the day a lot. Yeah, but speaking of climate, we had a really, really, really late summer here. And so we weren't too worried about it at the end of the day. We'd had a lot of rain into July, which was very irregular and unfortunate because of that irregular, what it means. But from a plan B, rain plan standpoint, we didn't really have one. Not recommended, but have a rain plan.
Well, it's very brave of you, so I commend that it worked out. I would love to have an outdoor wedding. I've really been thinking about, forest, water, pond, grass situation. Like, the aesthetic of it would be really nice, but also the feel of being in that space when you're performing a ceremony of this magnitude. It's like, I feel more connected to those spaces than I did to inside a church, for example. So I feel like that would be definitely the way to go for our wedding. But weather, climate is a huge concern. And I don't know if I would be confident winging it like that. I think I'd need to have a plan B. I said maybe rent a billion gazebos, but then does that fall? Is that a low waste wedding if I'm renting things?
Well, you don't have to worry about air conditioning or heating or anything like that if you are outdoors. I think our locale did allow us to worry less, and when you have a beautiful location, you don't need much decoration. We had very minimal decoration because we had this beautiful land around us,
That's very true. That's a very good point, actually. I have a question about decorations and flowers, maybe, but because the venue itself is so beautiful, it is its own decor, so you don't even need to accentuate it with anything. That's awesome. Did you? Okay, I want to go back to my guest list then, because otherwise I'm just going to go on a million tangents and I'm not going to get through what I really want to know. For invitations, I've received a couple invitations in the last couple of years. My friends are reaching the age, everybody's getting married. So half of them seem to be exclusively online. And then they send like a paper thank you with the picture, and I put those up on my fridge. But the other half is still doing the traditional send a save the date by mail, and then send the invitation and then the thank you card at the end as well by paper mail. So what did you decide to do with that?
We did all digital. We did a digital save the date and then a digital invite. And we also, in connection with that, tried to make a really accessible, easy to read and maneuver website. We used a website called With Joy, I think, which is available in Canada. It was a little bit complicated with both Canadian and US guests.
I can imagine.
We were not really prepared to do paper invites. We had just a few guests who had some issues like accessing it. And I think that is like the number one concern with a digital platform is, are all of your guests able to access it? And in the instances that we had, luckily it was just like close family, and we could problem solve pretty quickly and get them the invite and make sure they had what they needed. we printed one single invite for Matthew's grandmother, and uh-oh. Oh, I think we lost Gabriela. There she is.
Oh, I'm using an external camera, and I forgot that it times out every 30 minutes. So I have to go and. My bad.
Oh, you're quick though. That was well done.
As soon as it went, I was like, no. But you said you printed one singular invitation.
We printed one invitation because we were having trouble getting an invite to Matthew's grandmother. And she's nearby, so we were going to send it, pretty locally. But this is the invite that we sent. And it's actually now in a frame that my dad made. My dad's a carpenter, and this is some old oak that he had and made a frame for us. And we didn't have our wedding photos yet, so we put the invite in here. Because we didn't even send the invite. The one that we printed, especially for Grandma was able to figure out the website anyway. And we didn't even need to print it. So
it becomes memorabilia for you.
Yeah.
But I think that's a concern for, like, as we digitalize things, as everything's becoming digital now, and this Fireside Chat is about weddings in particular, but sustainable events in general, low waste events of any sort. And I would imagine that the intimate nature of a wedding would make problem solving a lot easier than if you were doing something more impersonal and you're sending mass invitations out for some kind of event. You're always going to be a bit worried that, there's a bit of accessibility issues. Maybe people aren't able to get to the information that you want them to get to. So it's good to hear that it didn't really happen for you. It wasn't. You had some measures to take if things went wrong, but you didn't even really need to use them at the end. So that could be a big source of confidence for somebody who's like, well, do I trust emails? Yeah, go for it. It's worth it.
And I think there's, whether you go the digital route or route, there's likelihood for them getting lost either way, right? Like, especially if you're sending invitations internationally, they might go missing. You never really know, and there's no way to track have they been received and opened. With a digital invite, you can actually, on most of the websites now, you can track if someone has opened it and responded, which is kind of nice, because if you realize that, oh, maybe you had the wrong email, this person hasn't even opened it, then you can go in and do some problem solving too.
Yeah, that's definitely a nice feature to have, to be able to. It's kind of like tracking your packages in the mail. On your website, did you include a registry at all for gifts, or what was your approach to that aspect of the wedding?
The registry was an adventure. Initially, we had planned for no registry. We've been living together for 4 years. We have pretty much everything we could need. And we didn't want to have to deal with packaging and shipping and all of that. That changed when a number of my family in particular, who weren't able to come because they were in the States, and with COVID precautions and everything, they weren't sure they would be able to travel. So they were asking for a registry. And they wanted a way to give back to us. So we opened a registry with a honeymoon fund and a couple select items that we knew that we would really love to have and would be really meaningful for us to have. We tried to make sure that there was a price range as well. So things that were really affordable, things that were kind of mid-range, and then things that were a little more expensive. And those more expensive ones we made like a group gift. So you could donate a portion, whether it was $5, $20, $50 to that fund for the gift. So,
and the logistics of that was all managed through the website that you used for the registry?
Yeah.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. So registry websites can do a lot of cool things, we found. And also the things that we put on those lists were things that we can't get locally anyway. So It was a toss-up. We did not put enough items on the registry for everyone to get a gift. That was also another thing we made sure to do. Like, while we had an initial guest list of 140, there were maybe 60 items on the list. And so a lot of people, and we're really grateful for this, donated to the honeymoon fund. And we just got back from our honeymoon a couple weeks ago, and it was a blast. And really, we did not have to spend much money. And that was really nice. And then there were some, items like, so I brought some artifacts. This is a very classic registry item, but we were gifted from a family, Lake Crusade.
Of course.
And I make sourdough bread. And I've been making sourdough bread in my finagled a kind of steamer oven situation for years, and it's never turned out very great. And I do love the Dutch oven now, and for that reason we have really yummy bread.
Yeah, you've noticed a big quality jump in the bread now?
Yeah. Yes, I have. But then we also have really cool friends who got us everyday things like Swedish dishcloths that we use for washing dishes and cleaning our counters. And then these locally made herb labels for your plants. So there's a bunch of them that a friend of ours got. They're just clay and paint. And they have, I have one in our rosemary back there, which was actually, I'll bring this over too, because why not?
And were these items in particular on your register, or were these just very thoughtful gifts that your friends?
No. Yeah, these are just thoughtful gifts. Our friends know our values. We've made them very clear, apparently, and they were like, here you go.
Well, I'm actually sure that many of your friends must share the same values as you as well. So it's the joy of bringing that community together. These like-minded people who've never met each other before.
Exactly. Yeah. Another really cool one was these little coasters that a friend of mine from university made. Actually, she's the reason that Matthew and I met in the first place. She encouraged me to become an RA with her at Concordia. And that's where I met Matthew. So fun fact, but she made these beautiful coasters and brought a ton of them and put them on the tables, and people took them home. And that was so lovely to be able to have, we did do guest favors. We did little herb pots that were our primary decoration for the table. Yeah. And then
I've seen those ones. Yeah, those are very cute.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I missed that part. I interrupted you and then my audio went. Could you repeat that?
No worries. Our little herb pots, and we got a surprise succulent group from the woman who put together the herbs, actually. But most of them were herb pots. Here's some leftovers. That's why I brought this over. Little herb pots that here, actually, I have a photo of those. There's the herb pots on the left and on the right. So those were
our favors that everybody took home.
And then everyone could take one home. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we had some leftovers even after that. So those are replanted.
Well, you were mentioning earlier before we started that, so not very many decorations, but there still were decorations. And that when you, your words were that when you finally set up the wedding, your house looked like it had been robbed just because of all of the things that had been stored in your house that you used to decorate the place. So how was that process? You must have planned ahead for a long time, collected pieces and had an idea and tried to find matching things from different sources. How did that go?
Yeah. Well, we started with a kind of vision color scheme plan. We knew we wanted greens and some kind of blue green, sage green to go with the landscape. And that was easily done with herbs. And then some wood accents too. So On the left of the screen, those like lantern type things, those were borrowed from good friends of ours who had their wedding and had all this decor that they were saving to lend to other people. And we were very grateful to get to have them lend us stuff. On the right-hand side, you'll see that like planter shelf. That's actually right here in our living room with more plants. All of that was from our house. We used a lot of like tables and surfaces and other decoration and bowls and platters and stuff from our house. For months leading up, I was thrifting serving platters, serving utensils, things like that. And that was all collected in a corner in our place. And yeah, the day that we moved everything to the park that morning, it went from like crazy disaster, everything everywhere in here, last minute things happening. In fact, our good friend was doing a bunch of calligraphy. So on the previous slide here, I think, you can see just a little bit of the games. There's a some white writing on that glass pane, and our friend was doing calligraphy on that. So there's like art supplies everywhere in our house. And when we moved everything out, yeah, it was bare. There was nothing left. Our kitchen table went, our like side table over here went as well. And yeah, everything was gone, and it looked like been robbed. But that was actually intentional. It was an intentional move too, because we wanted to make sure that whatever came back to our place was stuff that we would actually use, that we would actually decorate with, that wasn't just like fluff for the day. So we got one extra folding table that we purchased, which is actually really useful. It's my photography studio right now. And that was it, really.
Well, what about all those serving dishes and those platters and the utensils that you collected? Do you still have those, or did you give them away, or what did you do with all that?
Mixture of both. So, yep, I thrifted a lot of serving platters. And after I thrifted them, I did a lot of cleaning. There's a lot of cleaning involved with thrifting items, but you get to really, I don't know, use stuff that you find that you love. And I used the platters for drying flowers, which we'll also talk about later. Dried a lot of flower petals for confetti. And so that was set up all around our living room for a long time. And after the wedding, we did out like drink dispensers and serving platters, big plates and things to friends in the area. A lot of our people were traveling, so it was impractical to give those things to them. But we also had napkins that we gave out to friends, these lovely napkins that we bought off Marketplace from another wedding, we used for our wedding, and then we're actually giving some to Matthew's cousin who's getting married. And then we kept some for ourselves. We gave some to friends. Oh
my God, I really love that. That's like the third time you've mentioned today that somebody else's wedding has helped you with your wedding, and now you're going to be helping somebody else with their wedding. I think that this circle of sharing and passing along, it just makes the whole community aspect of what a wedding represents and why are we doing this in the first place. Especially when you've been married for 4 years, and for all intents and purposes, you are a married couple already. So yeah. What is the point of organizing all this? Well, it's to join families, to bring people together. And I think that this idea of having a much wider community that's all celebrating the same thing, passing things along to each other is so much more wholesome than the idea of a wedding industry where you get so stressed out about having, bridezillas in the room and stuff like that.
I know. I couldn't agree more. And a huge part of our wedding was recognizing those who had lent us things. We played a game in the beginning. We can hop back to this photo. Everyone is standing in a circle, though it looks like they're standing in a line. It was a big circle. And it was a game we played called Cross the Circle. And it was an icebreaker game during the pre-ceremony. We greeted our guests before the ceremony, and we played a game. And it went something like this. Cross the circle if you are from BC. Cross the circle if you're related to the bride, to the groom. Cross the circle if you lent something to the couple for this wedding. The number of people who cross doing that.
And people are just walking across it. That's so fun. That's a really cool game. I've never heard of that one.
Yeah, it was really, really fun. It was a great way to like recognize people who had done meaningful things for us, our families who traveled, and all of that. So, and then it gives people something to talk about afterwards too. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, when they're socializing. I remember that you walked across when they asked this question. Tell me more about that. Very smart.
Mm-hmm.
Go back to the picture of your dress, though. I want to know about what was the thought process behind the dress, because obviously if you put this much thought into every other aspect, then there must be something to say about the dress. It's beautiful, first of all.
Thank you. Yes, there's a lot of thought put into the dress, and I'm actually going to skip to a couple other slides. Let's see. I'm going to zoom past here to this one. I sewed my dress out of my mom's wedding dress. And you can see her here on the left in 1990. And it's a very 90s inspired dress. Look at those big old sleeves. My mom has been fighting cancer for the past few years. And there was a point in time where we weren't sure if she'd be able to come to travel.
I'm sorry to hear that. It's difficult.
Yeah, that was challenging. Good news is she did come. She was able to come. She was very well and able to join us, and she actually officiated for us. But that was
amazing.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And she did a great job. She's a very good public speaker. Yeah. So I always knew that I wanted to kind of make my own. I wasn't really finding dresses that I loved. I tried on a couple just kind of for fun with my sister-in-law, and mother-in-law. And it was kind of just like, oh, this is a style I like. Okay. But I wanted to challenge the idea that we buy a dress, it's the perfect dress, and we wear it once. I wanted to give new life to something that had already been used. So there's actually a lot of options. There are websites where you can purchase a dress that's already been worn. Does involve shipping and everything, of course. Mine involved shipping too. Mine was in Chicago. You see my friend Hannah is on Zoom with me, and she picked up the dress from my mom, and she took it apart. She took the top and bottom apart, and she sent me the skirt fabric, which was huge. Lots and lots of fabric. From there, I got in contact with a sewing instructor because I could not have done this on my own. But I brought the fabric to her. There was actually a huge stain that I had to remove too. So there was some cleaning involved. And then she helped me sew the skirt into a slightly more modern style skirt. And then from some of the skirt fabric excess, we made a top, which is right here. And I wanted to be able to wear the top again for anniversaries and stuff like that, and have a piece of my mom with me. So it was a lot of work. It was very rewarding. It was very meaningful, and I wouldn't have done it any differently. So
I'm incredibly impressed that you went out of the way to learn how to sew to make your own wedding dress. That's talking about taking a risk and getting out of your comfort zone. But the train of the dress survived pretty much intact. It looks exactly the same as in your mom's picture.
Yeah, I can. Here's another picture of my mom seeing it for the first time. Coming back to values, I think values are a huge part of wedding planning, and you have to stick to what you and your spouse find meaningful. And for us, an aspect of that was a low impact wedding. And that really facilitated a lot of the decisions. It made a lot of decisions easier. But you have to stay committed to those other things you value too. And for us, something like a first look wasn't really something we needed. Like, we got ready together with all of our friends here. We did a first look with my parents instead, because this dress meant something to them too. And it was wonderful.
Seeing their daughter all grown up and getting married, that in itself is.
I'm sure that's
so cute. I love that picture.
Isn't that sweet? I know. I love that one too. Yeah.
We actually have a good question in the comments here that I want to ask you. If from my mom. So if you didn't have your mom's wedding dress, what would you have done for the fabric?
I went around to thrift stores at first, and there's a lot of wedding dresses in thrift stores.
Or that auction site that you mentioned as well would be a really good option for that too.
Yes, definitely. I wouldn't have bought something new. I would have, probably rented something, or I could even have put together something that wasn't meant to be a wedding dress. I would have been happy to just wear something comfortable. I wanted a two-piece so that I could be in shorts half the time too, and be playing games and not be wearing the train the whole time. And so I changed, but kept the top. So I think there's a lot of options out there if you're willing to break the mold. You can make something, you can use something you already have, you can borrow something, you can rent something, you can purchase something that's been worn already, you can thrift something and reconstruct it. There's lots of options out there if you're willing to get creative.
And the idea of it having to be a long white dress too is there's no reason that you can't go out of your way to do something totally different there. Have a dress that you're I was gonna say your high school graduation dress, but maybe that's not the best for your wedding.
Well, why not, right? If you have something,
I don't think I fit into my high school dress anymore.
Yeah, well, yes, you might have to do some altering. Yeah.
But I think we're running out of time here, and I think one of the really important questions that I didn't manage to get to is food. What was food like for your event?
All right, let's see. Here's what food looked like. We had sandwiches and finger food, so we didn't have to worry about utensils. We had palm plates that we did have to order online. We did not find those anywhere locally, though I tried. And the palm plates could be composted. We brought our own compost bucket because we really, really wanted people to compost. I made a nifty little sign that I used my enuf training to put together. And then we had reusable napkins and things like that. So we really didn't have much waste in terms of food. We considered a potluck. We considered making our own sandwiches. That was going to be a lot of work. And also for travelers, it's hard to do potluck if you're staying in an Airbnb. So we opted for ordering from a local family business. And they were absolutely fantastic. And it was another way that we got to support our community that supports us. So all of the food that we catered, we did food, we did the drinks we made ourselves, and our amazing wedding party did all of that. All of the jars that you see here that people used as cups were either from our own cabinets, our friends' cabinets, or thrifted. And so these big beverage jugs too really, really came in handy. And they were also borrowed. We bought two. The two big ones on the left, we bought from thrift stores, gave one away afterwards, kept one for ourselves. There were 3 others that we borrowed, which was great. We had a coffee cart instead of alcohol, which was a huge hit. We had an early kind of afternoon wedding, so we weren't too worried about people missing out on drinks for the evening. If people wanted to go out afterwards, they were more than welcome to. Again, it was a public park. We couldn't have alcohol, so we wanted to do something fun and different, and we did a coffee cart. And
Love it.
this, yeah, it was a huge hit. People are still telling us about it. So they made
I've
us
never
sweet
seen
custard.
that. It's so ingenious, especially for a daytime
It
wedding.
was a lot of fun. Yeah.
And were you
Perfect for
using the
daytime
mason
wedding.
jars here for the coffee, or did you have mugs, or what was the situation for the coffee?
Yeah, so I'd say if you really want to make sure that you cut back on waste as much as possible, you have to be very transparent about that with your vendors. You have to say, you know, this is a value that we have, and here's the outcome we'd like to see. What options do you have for that? So the food came in these metal trays that you see in the back, which was great because they were reusable. They were from the restaurant. We returned them after. The baskets and stuff that you see, that's all just like storage baskets we have in our house. That big crate that you see under the drinks, that's also from our house. And then the mason jars were an idea from the woman who owns the cart there. And she was doing another wedding that wanted no plastic, and she already had mason jars and compostable straws. And so she said, here's an offer I have. And we said, that sounds great. Let's do that. So we had lots of mason jars throughout the day.
And what about the palm
Yeah.
plates? What made you decide to have the single-use compostable plates rather than maybe washable ceramic plates or something like that? What was the consideration there?
Cost and weight. We looked at a lot of thrift stores for washable, reusable plates, and they were very expensive, even from a thrift store. Didn't really fit in our budget. We wanted people to not be worried about dropping them also, since you're outside. The area that we were in had a cement floor. You know, obviously there's grass, and if you drop something ceramic on glass or on grass, it won't break. But at the same time, the mason jars were a little more like, okay, we'll take this risk. The plates, we wanted to make sure they wouldn't break and we'd have a mess. And weight, yeah, they're just heavy. They're heavy to carry. Yeah, so we went the palm plate route. It was easier to get more uniform ones. It was kind of a last minute thing we had to deal with, so it was also easier. Yeah, that was kind of the main reason behind the mess. And
yeah, because it's you're making a low waste wedding, because the point of it is the wedding is not the low waste, right? So you have to be able to balance what is the main value that you want to portray, and what is the main purpose of the event that you want to go smoothly. And if you want to be able to enjoy it and not be constantly stressed out about every detail, you're going to have to make some sacrifices here and there in order to be able to have that event at the end of the day, because otherwise nothing's going to be perfect, but we can be very, very happy with it. And I think that from what you've shown, pretty close to perfect. Is there anything really that you would have changed, you would have done differently, that you weren't satisfied with? It was more effort than was worth, or are you pretty happy with everything?
The day shaped up to be more perfect than we could have imagined. Everyone really lent a hand. There were bridesmaids and their plus ones picking blackberries for the drinks the morning of. There were last minute alterations made to the skirt. That was not done by me, but my friend Hannah, who originally took apart the skirt. So many people came early and helped set up, and really it was a beautiful day. We had 2 hospitalizations actually, though. First one, so if I could do anything differently, I would have peered into the future and seen how to prevent 2 of our friends going to the hospital. One was for some glass that broke, that was stepped on here at our place.
It wasn't even the mason jars at the location. It was at your house that they broke the glass.
Yes. Luckily, my maid of honor, one of my maid of honors, I had two, my best friend and my sister, and she's a nurse. So she was able to kind of calm everything down, get everything under control, but then was like, it's deep in there, time to go to the ER, let's go. So then another bridesmaid, and it was two bridesmaids who had to go. So two of them missed the ceremony, which was a little bit sad.
Yeah,
one of the reasons we put a lot of value into our photo and video vendors. That was half our budget, was photo and video, because we knew we'd had family and friends who couldn't attend, and we wanted to have some visual representation, coverage of the ceremony so that they could feel included too. So that came in handy. And then the other one was an allergy reaction, even though, here I'm going to flip to our dessert table. We had homemade lemon bars. We had 3 different bakeries that did our cake, our brownies, and then some allergy-free desserts. Turns out even the allergy-free desserts had something in them that caused a reaction. So another one of our friends had to go to the ER.
Oh, that's scary. I'm sorry to hear that. But they're both okay now.
Everyone's okay. Yeah. But yeah, I think they knew us by the end of the day. They're like, oh yeah, you're from that wedding. Okay.
Very memorable. All right,
yeah.
I think we should wrap this up here. I'm going to invite Carolus to come back in. Monica, thank you I have a million more questions later, but thank you so much for all your time and sharing your pictures, your beautiful pictures, all of your ideas, your process. It's actually very helpful to have this conversation, think about it, maybe weigh some things, some pros, some cons, have interesting ideas that I hadn't thought of before. So I'm excited now.
It's a pleasure to share. And actually, I do have I made some reels during the process on Instagram. So I can pop my Instagram too I put that in the comments section maybe?
Yeah, of course.
Because if people are interested, they can always go there too. Yeah. Oh, maybe I can't add something.
I can add it to the comments. I just need to make sure that I don't miss anything. So I'll find it and I'll add it to the comments. But no, it's a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much. I know Gabriela has a million more questions, but I think I get to ask one question. So I'm just wondering. So Christmas is coming up, and New Year is coming up, and holiday season is coming up, and I'm just if you can speak a little bit about what transferable lessons you've learned from putting your own wedding, and then in a ways that's sustainable, and the ways that can apply to these kind of holidays.
Well, I do think it comes down to values at the end of the day. I think you have to stay committed to your values. And if what you really value is giving extravagant gifts, then find a way to do that that's in line with your values. If what you value is quality time with your family and friends, forget about the decorations, forget about all the over-the-top stuff, and just be with your family. And, if you fall somewhere in between and you want to do a little bit of both, then you have to do that too. I think, we had things that were not super sustainable as part of our wedding, last minute things we totally forgot about. And we had to just lean into that and not become monsters worrying about, every little thing, and still be able to enjoy the day and make a wonderful experience for our guests. Yeah, I think there's a lot of transferable skills. Making your own things, passing on gifts too. If there are gifts that you have been given and don't really need and don't really want, well, then why not regift them to somebody who will? Things like that. Getting creative and thinking outside the box and breaking the mold a little bit, I think goes a long way.
Yeah, I agree. And speak of thinking outside the box, I'm particularly, I'm very I was really intrigued by the games instead of dancing, and I'm actually like I feel like this is kind of weddings that I would really appreciate having no ability to dance to save my life, and and so
Yeah.
being able to play games, I think would be much more appreciated to me, at least for things that I go to, and I think summer for holidays is like I like playing games on my quality time too. So
Yeah. It was a blast, and it really achieved what we hoped it would with bringing people together. And I have to shout out the family that really supplied the vast majority of the yard games that we used. My friend Hannah, who was helping me a lot with my wedding dress, her family lives in Seattle, and they drove up with all of those lawn games because we didn't have many. And so they were all borrowed from friends and family, and really, like, I think that was the most beautiful part, was having friends and family be such a vital piece of this. Without them, there would have been nothing. There would be no reason to have a celebration, and there would have been far less, like getting together and working together and doing something beautiful. And that was really the celebration at the end of the day.
yeah, it's really beautiful, and speaking of friends and family, like I say, this is the kind of the firesides that I really enjoy the most of having, getting to discuss with having the team members being there, and getting to talk to, because I think like we're really blessed with having like phenomenal people in the team, and is their stories are just so amazing, and so it's like we don't get you know share that as often as I like, and it reminds me of Fireside that we had a couple months ago was Annie, who was actually the community coordinator between the two of you, and it was just casual, and she did set up the composting system in Dawson College back when she was before she joined Concordia, and it's just a lot of accomplishment and yeah, just stories that are really um, inspiring, I think, and I really appreciate that you came back to share your own story and your journey with your own wedding. And when I started thinking, I was like, oh, Gabriela should really talk to Monica. And then the second step was like, maybe everybody else should watch that conversation. And that's I'm very happy that you both agreed and you enabled my some crazy ideas, and yeah, just really inspiring. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you guys. It's been a pleasure.